Oh Lord. Okay, well we'll have to welcome. Hello everybody, and welcome back to uh, Doc Club. A little technical issues there. I have just fixed it, I hope, and I will start from the top. So it's good to see you guys back here today. Um, Glad that everybody could join in and see the confessions. I noticed that some of you in the live chat maybe didn't see the confessions yet, so go ahead and check that out, and then leave a comment. I'd love to know. I'd really love to know what you guys think, because um, you know this was a pretty big case. To go from one guilty party to potentially 8 suspects is a pretty big swing. So if you guys haven't seen this one yet, definitely check it out. It's definitely a good documentary, and it's only a single episode, so it moves along pretty well. Glad to see everybody out there. Give a little shout out. Started solo today. I think Jack will be with us shortly. He had something that he was just too busy and he had to handle. So Dark Side of the Moon, glad to see you here. I don't recall. Stuart King, glad to see you. Thanks for back doing the show. Appreciate that comment. Um, they're going to be covering some true crime documentaries, different angles. But what we're seeing over and over in these false confessions, and that's the last couple of weeks we've been doing the show, is number one, we see withholding things from the suspect or the person being interrogated, such as your family or even a lawyer, or food, sleep, and water. We're seeing another tactic where they're aggressive and false promises are given. And, in this one, we have Joe Dick Jr. and, and Daniel also saying that the the tactics were so strong that they were fearful of the detective. They weren't, the overriding thing was they're fearful of the death penalty, of course, but they were actually fearful of the interrogator, as if they thought there was going to be violence brought against them. I mean, so much is wrong with this. So many things are, alarming to say the least. Shout out to Susan, inexplicably Susan. Yeah, sorry that you can't be with us today, but you're along listening. That's great. Stuart King, you brought up a new potential documentary, and that is, um, oh gosh, I just had it here. What was the name of it? I will check it out. I know I have it. It is called. Um, oh wow, what did I do with it? I had it, and then Murder on a Sunday Morning. There you go. So maybe that's one that we'll check out in the future. Murder on a Sunday Morning. You guys seem to have a little chat. You guys seem to have some strong opinions about that one. So I'll definitely take a look at that, and maybe we'll have to do that one in a future in a future episode. I'm kind of. I'm kind of interested in picking documentaries that are easy to view, that you guys can either watch for free on YouTube or Netflix or something. Um, and so but keep those suggestions coming. I already have quite a big stack, but if you guys are really interested in Murder on a Sunday Morning, I might have to take a look at that one. Um, it's fun homework to do. So, and then you're talking about the book. Okay, so there's a book on the Norfolk Fort as well, entitled "The Staircase" or "Staircase." Interesting. Oh, the Staircase documentary is called "The Staircase." It was a great. Okay, well, yeah, that's interesting. We'll have to take a look at that one. I will take a note of it right now. I don't want to lose that. So, if anybody is interested in joining into the show, I'm going to drop that right now, and you guys are more than welcome to pop on and join in and leave your comments about the confessions, or if you want to talk about a future documentary, we can do that as well. Mainly focused on the confessions. there was we covered a review, but we didn't cover all the details of what happened in the documentary. There's always stuff that we left out. There's always stuff that was left out in the documentary as well. So, one of the things that I mentioned in the premiere is the use of the death penalty to elicit confessions or elicit a false confession. And whatever your opinion is on the death penalty, whether we should have it or shouldn't, it's hard to deny the fact that it is used as a leverage tactic, and the fear of death will change you to do something that you don't want to do. Will get you to admit to a crime that you didn't do. And next week we're gonna start talking about Outcry. So if you haven't seen Outcry yet, you should check it out. I'll drop a link to the IMDb. I think it was on Showtime. You can definitely find it somewhere. If you can't find it, join the Discord. I will put the Discord link in the description, and then I think we can get you some files to see it. But Outcry is another example where the death penalty was used as a leverage tactic, and so I don't think that's what we want. I know it's very common for prosecutors to do it. It's a strong tool that they have at their disposal for the states that have the death penalty. But I don't think that it was designed for that. I don't think it's designed to elicit confessions just because. But that's just my opinion. Maybe you guys have a different take on it. I'd love to know. That's just one man's opinion. So let me know how you guys think about that. I'll check the comment section. Darkside said she will join when we talk about murder on a Sunday morning. Oh, okay. All right. Well, definitely cool then. Definitely have to check that one out. I don't recall says that's a very good point, Jeff. Confess or you will die. What a choice. And I think that's exactly my point, that when we use the death penalty not as a punishment but as a tool to get someone to confess, I think that's not the point of the death penalty. I know that it's very popular and common to use for prosecutors, and it would be difficult for them not to want to use it as a leverage tactic. But as we can see in a lot of these false confessions and these wrongful convictions, that where there is a death penalty, it is used as leverage and it gets them to fold. I would find a hard time going to trial with the death penalty with a prosecutor who is convinced I did it. Juries they're not an exact science, and I guess that's why we have the appeals court, but the appeals court is not an exact science either. So as we've spoken in previous podcasts or on this show, that it's really important to get the first case right, because every appeal after that is more difficult. The gentleman in this show, the Norfolk Four, they were successful on appeal. They failed in their court case, but they were successful on appeal, and they have since been able to get their names restored. But it's not an easy thing. I think we talked about maybe $2 million that these guys got. But $2 million and your reputation is ruined. It's a consolation prize. It only lasts so long. If you don't have any income coming in, or you have a hard time finding work, it's very difficult. I don't recall also says you can say I am innocent and I will take it to trial, but too often you cannot trust the justice system. And that's another good point that you bring up. I don't recall, and we talked about this in the premiere, that the expert from, I think, San Francisco, forget his name, I could look it up. I know Jack would probably know it. We need Jack. Where are you, Jack? Hurry up. And the lawyer that testified said, once you play a false confession, a confession in front of a jury, it overrides physical evidence. It overrides logic. It overrides, DNA. And when you hear someone in their own words confess to a crime, it's really hard for a jury to think anything else. They kind of get blinded. They get blinded by the recordings, and that was a big point that was brought up in this documentary. So, as you say, you can't trust the justice system, but is it the justice system, or is it specific things that we can point to in these cases, such as, playing a confession in front of a jury, even though it overrides a jury's mind, and so that's it. Robert Leo, he's an expert on confessions. Thank you. I don't recall. Couldn't do it without you. Yes, his name is Robert Leo. And so yeah, that's his claim, that once you play the confession for the jury, it's really hard for a jury to think anything else. So there are things like that. There are other things we can point to. I still do, and I think it's important for me to say that, and Jack has said it, and others have said it as well. Like, I still have faith in the justice system. Like, for the most part, the justice system works correctly. I really do believe that. I'm not just blowing hot air because I want to be a bootlicker or something, but for the most part, when we, it works. For the most part, the justice system works. It gets murderers off the street. It gets criminals for the most part. And the point that I bring up time and time again is it's the human element. It is that human element that's driven by greed, that's driven by fear, and what other motivations that we have, and so although we highlight a lot of mistakes that are made by the justice system on the show, and we really talk about wrongful convictions, I think you got to remember that 99% of the time, somewhere around there, and in the high 90s, I would assume that the system operates correctly. Does it operate perfectly? No, nothing is perfect. And if you think that, if you're striving for perfection, I think that's just too high of a bar, as we have the human element. That's something we can talk about. If you guys disagree with me, as Jack and I say a lot, we're big boys, we can handle it. Speaking of Jack, he's here, and we'll welcome him to the show. Jack, welcome.
Well, hello. How's everybody doing today?
Hope fashionably late, like usual, huh, Jack?
That's right. No, something came up. I had to take care of.
No worries. Choice, so. No worries. Just glad to have you here now. I don't know if you heard what I was just speaking on, but we highlight, we highlight the negative part of the justice system a lot, and it came up in conversation that, I don't know how you feel about this, but I do really feel that for the most part, like the majority of cases are done correctly, that the justice system has overall integrity, but it's the human element. And there are jurisdictions that are worse than others. There are specific officers that are worse than others, but for the most part, I do still have faith in the justice system. I don't know. What do you feel about that, Jack? Has the years and years gone by eroded your faith completely? Are you
not completely? No, I know that there are jurists, but by that I mean judges, men and women that strive to get it right. I know there are prosecutors out there, men and women that strive to get it right, and I know there are police investigators, and I'm talking about from a small town, small county town, whatever, to the large cities that strive to get it right. The problem, the problems come in when you have that element, just like in any other industry or profession, of people that have less honest intentions, shall we say, or maybe that doesn't enter into it in the beginning, but somebody they know or a friend of a friend calls and, hey, my nephew's in trouble. Can you do anything? This is his Aunt Jean, and he's just a good kid. Whatever, it doesn't matter. There are so many reasons that these cases go sideways. And this is now, as we've seen, has extended into our crime labs. And this has been going on for decades. So, as we've often said, cases are only as good as those that are in charge of it at that time. You might have a different set of people in charge of, say, the Avery Dassey cases that would have turned out totally different, right? That's
You know,
my
I think,
opinion.
yeah, I kind of agree with you that, and that's why we should really rely on physical evidence more than anything, right? That's why I think we're finding time and time again that at least the way confessions are elicited, now, the way that it's done now, and we've talked about just getting a conviction before finding the truth. That'll come up as a recurring theme with most of these cases. Um, if you have two different prosecutors and they have two different theories, but if the physical evidence is the thing that they base the case on, I think you're going to go in the right direction. I really do. I think that you're going to come to the same result. If you rely on, personal feelings or pressured confessions, then you could have a different outcome. But if you investigate a case and I investigate a case and we focus on that physical evidence, the blood, the fingerprints, the DNA, and then tie it together with circumstantial evidence that makes a narrative to understand, I think we're going to come away with a similar result. It's not, maybe if you think about the analogy of baking a cake, your cake might come out vanilla, mine might come out chocolate, but we'll still both have cakes. You know what I mean?
Right.
Whereas if you rely on just a confession, words and words alone, like we've talked about in the past in other cases,
Yep.
such as
Brendan.
Brendan Dassey,
Yep.
words and words alone, like we're going to talk about next week in Outcry. I hope you guys join us for Outcry. You want to check
Oh,
out
boy.
Outcry. If you can't find it, join Discord, send me a message. I'll try to get you some links to watch it, some files. But Outcry, the same thing. Words and words alone convicted someone. So that's where I stand. That maybe we're coming to the realization that elicited confessions, unless done very well, like you really have to know what you're doing. You have to be, and maybe this is the question, the larger question, Jack. Is it about finding the truth or is it about getting the conviction? And we hear that time and time again.
That's right. That's exactly right. In this discussion, I think we did talk about it a little bit last night after we got done, but I'm just going to talk briefly about when we talk about, you said it has to rely on physical evidence. And talking about the burn pit of Stephen Avery, we can go round and round and round this subject, and we have, and we continue to do so, about what was actually there and what did they actually pull out of there. What was actually there leading up to it, and what we see in the few photos that we have, others that were back there. And then we walk away a few days later, by November 10th, Pevito somehow finds Adam Bizet in this tarp that's at the queso locker, queso warehouse, when him and I think it's Sturtevant that were going through this
Right.
tarp. So, but they don't take a single photograph of all these cremains that are allegedly in this burn pit. Not one.
Huh.
Now, I don't. Again, we come back to who is present and why don't you follow? I mean, Sturtevant didn't follow any procedure, and this is not a new guy. You look
Right.
at what he did when he arrived there. He didn't follow a single procedure. I mean, maybe at the outset of, taking an examination of this alleged bone that Joseph found that
Right.
they didn't collect, they didn't take a photograph of. He walks over he says, he goes over to the burn pit, he starts poking around, picks up a stick, and then he sees this pile of bones there. He doesn't say, "Okay, everybody away, back off. Let's get some people in here that know what the fuck they're doing." Pardon my French. Take some photographs, grid this shit off, and start processing the scene properly. That's what should have happened.
Right. It goes back to the point of, it's still a human system.
That's
It's
right.
still humans, and it's the weakest link in the chain kind of thing, right? And
That's
we see that in the confessions. I don't think that it's normal policy to withhold food, sleep,
no,
and
no,
and so there's mistakes in the confessions in the Norfolk 4 case as well.
huge problems.
And so, is it stronger policies? Yes, it's stronger policies. But number two is you got to have teeth to the policies. There has to be accountability. There has to be, I'm sorry, but we're in a punishment system. There has to be punishment. People have to lose their jobs if they don't. One of the things that's been amazing in the last 10 years or so is the use of, body cams, right?
Yes,
There's no
that's right.
excuses anymore. And you can't, and you hear people say it all the time. They record the police record them, and they say, this is for my safety as much as it's for yours, right?
That's right.
So there's no question when it comes back, well, what actually happened? Who threw the first punch? And
Take
now
the
we have
ambiguity. Take the ambiguity out of it.
absolutely. And so the more policy that we put in place, but there's got to be repercussion. There has to be teeth to the policy that if there's misconduct. And it's something that we spoke about yesterday, Jack, kind of at length, was after the show we recorded. We were talking about if these policies, and this keeps coming up, this is a recurring theme that you're going to hear from me many times. If the policies don't have teeth, they're just words on paper. And
That's right.
getting a slap on the wrist, 2 weeks off without pay, which essentially is a vacation, right? Getting an F grade on a report card that doesn't impact your life. What if someone writes you up and you're and okay, well, you did that wrong. All right, don't do that again. Okay, like, unless these policies have specific teeth, right? And do we leave it up to 50 separate states to come up with their own? Do we have a federal legislation? No one, not a lot of people are popular of federal legislation in state cases. I don't even know if that would work. I'm not a lawyer. But each state, it seems, has to have stronger rules on, if a cop is found, in a past broadcast, we talked about a cop planting marijuana on a suspect. We saw it. They had a camera rolling. They caught him.
Yep.
As long as that cop can never be a cop again, I'm cool. But if you can just get, oh, don't do that again. Here's 2 weeks off without pay. That was bad. Shake a finger. Slap on the wrist. That's not enough for me. That means that the system is going to continue to deteriorate and to continue to allow that behavior.
Well, we know that there's certain people that they can't do certain jobs. I could, I could never be a nurse.
I couldn't be a nurse.
Because
shout out to all the nurses in the house, by the way. That's one of the toughest professional jobs out there. I worked construction for a long time. Right out of college. That's some pretty demanding work. You eat a big lunch when you go to lunch because you're hungry. I think that a nurse probably works harder than the average carpenter. Shout out to all my carpenters out there. Love you guys. But I think you make a good point, and I just wanted to shout out to the nurses out there. But
well, that human
not everybody's suited for every kind of work, and I think that's your point.
Well, that is my point. So, when you have police officers, and again, I think we have the majority of the police that are out there, not just here, but around the world, majority are there to do a good job. They want to do a good job. They want to find the actual criminal. Shout out to them. But you have that element, just like the video that you showed last week of this cop planted that marijuana. Well, you have that element of this guy clearly is probably trying to make, arrest, make a name for himself, blah, blah, blah. Whatever the motivation is, it doesn't really matter. He can't be a cop. He cannot be trusted to do the right thing around people. I'm sorry. So this, when you get caught doing that, at least, and I can't preach about the rest of the world, but my feeling is I don't want to hamstring any cop that's trying to do his job. But people that can't be cop that are planting stuff, I'm sorry, you cannot be a police officer. Period. I don't give a damn where you go in the 50 U.S. states. You can't be a cop because you can't
Yeah,
be trusted.
you kind of bring up a point, and we could even use our example of nurse, because we were talking about that as a profession. And if you're a nurse and nurse or doctor, and the direction is to put in X IV, and you put in Y IV, and the patient dies, and you
Yep.
have a bad outcome, you don't last long in that profession. If one time, it was a big mistake. Two times, it's not a mistake. You're just not cut out to do this. You know what I mean? So,
Right.
um, think about any other position. If if you get the wrong outcome, just think about it like that, like as outcomes. Whether you get the right person behind bars, you get the wrong person behind. You sell the car, you don't sell the car. The patient is healthy and moves on. The patient dies in front of you. Whatever example you want to use, the outcome. If you get the wrong outcome, or you get to that outcome in a wrong way, you don't last long. Except we have some strong rules about qualified immunity. For one, someone has to write you up and report you, and you have to have a prosecutor who's going to prosecute an officer. It's not popular for prosecutors to charge officers because they rely on officers to get them evidence to get their cases. So there is you know, and understand. I understand it. You don't want to go arresting all the officers that have helped you get your cases closed. I mean, there is some complex relationships in there, and I think if we don't recognize that, then we're not being honest with ourselves either.
Well, I'm older generation. Probably, you're a little bit younger than me by a couple of years. Well, okay, quite a few years,
A
but
couple
nonetheless,
more.
yeah. I mean, I think that we both lean to this. Maybe it's an old-fashioned kind of thing that um, you want things done correctly, but in our lifetime, there was a lot of corruption, and it's recognized now. I want positive change for the younger generation moving forward. And
Yeah.
it must be recognized, and we've talked about it, not to blather on, but there are certain jobs that are specialized, and we must recognize that as a society, to me. And there must be things in place that are rewarding and also have consequences. That's
Yeah.
my opinion, right?
Well, we talked about this in the past that it's in some jurisdictions, especially in this country, it's not a lot of training to be an officer. There's
Oh,
training, of course.
if you can shoot a gun, go to the range and shoot a gun and hit X target in a certain range, you're probably going to get hired because they need a police officer. Now, they probably train them a little bit more, but in a lot of
I
these
think most,
jurisdictions, you're
I
exactly
think
right.
most of it's like a 2-year degree. They don't require a 4-year degree. Where
Oh, right,
we go across the pond to England or many parts of Europe, they have 4-year degrees.
right.
And the more time that you have invested in your education, the more seriously you're going to take it.
Yes.
The more chances of you losing your job. I know a lot of people out there that they're like, if I'm not good at my job, I get fired. They'll just find
Right,
someone else. Corporate
right.
America, they're just like, you didn't meet your quota. Amazon worker, if you can't keep up
You're
to
out.
the quota, you're fired. So if
It's
you're
like
not
that.
good at your job, you get fired. And
It's like
yet
it's, it's like
I
that in
don't
other places too.
that's right. So why do we have a double standard when it comes to law enforcement? When in such an important job, nonetheless, that's the point that I'm driving. It's such an important part of our society where we really want to get, 90+% accuracy, we accept subpar behavior and performance.
Well, this extends. We have to expand that just a little bit more, because now what we've seen in so many cases is that the police have become the jury and the judge, and they're going to help the case. We've seen this. This is not. I'm not just making it up. I'm certainly these cases are more rare, but it does happen. They've decided that this person's guilty, or their superiors have said this guy, this gal did it. Now we just got to find the evidence, guys. We got to find that evidence to push it over and get it to the prosecutor so he can convict this person.
Right. And that's the opposite of what I've said before, the scientific method, right?
That's right.
Jazznaz says, don't worry, if you get fired from one department, you can move to another department and start again. And it's such a great point that
that's right.
We have mentioned multiple times. I know I've said that almost verbatim out of my mouth multiple times. And that is another issue that, as I said, if, I guess that happens in if we want to compare it to corporate America, there's such a thing called failing up. Yeah, I worked at, I worked at Yahoo for 4 years. Why did you leave? Oh, difference of opinion. Okay, well, here's a better job at Google.
Right.
How did you get a better job at Google? I don't know. I just fell backwards into it. So, I mean, if we're going to compare it fairly to other areas, it does happen. But I think the overarching point that you and I would probably make is that it needs to have a higher standard. We need to have a higher standard in law enforcement. People's lives are on the line. And I think the medical analogy is really strong. I think I'm going to continue to use that one because people's lives are on the line there too. And
they are.
And so I think it's a fair analogy to use, a doctor, law enforcement, nurse, officer, something like that. Because these are really important parts of our society.
Crime lab analyst?
Sure, crime lab analyst as well. That we expect, a very high percentage of accuracy. That we don't want to accept major mistakes continually. And one of the biggest points that I think is often lost, like we always hear about these big settlements, right? These guys got around $8-10 million, $2 million a piece. About who's paying for that? The taxpayer is paying for that, right?
That's right.
So we don't want to afford to pay this money that could go to education or training or whatever, lowering your property taxes. We don't want to continue to make these giant payouts. So that's another incentive for us to demand strict policies, accuracy,
and consequences if you intentionally, if you make a mistake, that's one thing. If you intentionally do it and cause somebody to go to jail,
and then frankly, you should be civilly liable, and it should be easy to sue someone. If a cop throws marijuana in the back of your car, you should be able to sue them, and there's no qualified immunity for that. Now, I'm not a lawyer. Maybe that happens more frequently than I'm aware, but that's how I feel it should be. And like you're saying, we need stricter rules about how this stuff is conducted. And I hate sounding like a broken record, but that's just what it's going to be, I guess.
Well, right, it has to be, because this pushback, you want this. I think about the criminal justice system, locally, statewide, federally. I can't really think too much about it, how it works in the other parts of the world nearly as much, but I'm thinking, Canada's got, they've got their own rules just like every other country, but you want this balance. Even though it's an adversarial system, that's the way they set it up. But the adversarial part can't be to such a degree that the state or the federal cannot have such an advantage over the defense. They can't. There has to be balance. The checks must work. Checks and balances, I should say, must work to ensure fairness for both sides. And the prosecutor, a lot of people say, well, he's with the state, and that's true. He's on the side of the state, but the prosecutor's role is to make sure that the trial is fair for both sides. That's the truth.
Well, and strong judges to do the same, right?
That too. Yep.
That the judge should be a fair referee. A fair referee. You shouldn't be, yeah, you're getting paid for the state as well. Taxpayers are paying for you, but we're not looking for convictions. We're looking for the truth, and with the truth,
right.
we will get the proper conviction.
That's right.
And like I said about my, analogy of baking a cake earlier, if you bake a cake and I bake a cake, your turns out white, mine turns out brown. We still have a cake as long as we follow the physical evidence and we don't, start throwing in ingredients that don't belong and making decisions about how it, about the outcome, what we want the outcome to be before we do it.
Agreed. The role of the police and the prosecutor really, it can't be to drive a case to a specific direction. It has to go the direction the actual evidence is found. And we've seen this like in this case here, this Norfolk fellow, this Detective Ford. I mean, this guy is a real piece of crap. Man, oh man. He is. I can't say enough of the really bad words about him, and I'm not going to. What he did to these guys, oh my God, it's crazy.
Well, speaking of him, I found an article since, and so cases connected to Glenn Ford to be reviewed by prosecutors, and this is from 2023. So this is last fall, and this is so that's recent. All of his cases, or most of his cases, I'll read on. You're going to review the Norfolk Commonwealth's attorney offices are partnering with the University of Virginia Law School to review cases connected to former detective convicted of extortion charges more than a decade ago. The office announced the partnership on Friday, saying it will allow for the examination to uncover any misconduct by Robert Ford, who the office said was involved in wrongful convictions of several people. God.
Wow.
I hate to use that analogy of one bad apple spoils the basket, but it holds. The partnership will review all closed prosecution files connected to Ford's investigative work. So again, we go back to what is this is a partnership between the universities, so they're using it as a learning tool. Future law students are going to review this, right? So it's not straight up just pure cash coming from the taxpayer, but some of it is being paid for by the taxpayer. What happens when they uncover wrongdoing in these cases, Jack?
Right.
It's going to cost the taxpayer more money. So yes, I know it's expensive to offer more training for law enforcement. I know it's expensive to get to have the tools in place to make sure. I know that it costs a lot of money to pass legislation, and I know that it's an uphill battle. But if we don't, it just ends up costing us more in the long run.
I agree. I mean, we've talked about this thing about, a couple weeks ago, we talked about American Nightmare, and that ended up, Denise and Aaron ended up with a $2 million settlement, $2 million that city insurance or city and insurance had to fork over. I guess it was the city because,
right.
Well, I don't really know the specific details, but it said the city agreed, so it could have been a combination of both, or it could have just been the city had to, belly up that money. So, and this happens time and time. I mean, you look at the city of Chicago. How many settlements have they had to fork over? It's an unreal amount of
That's right.
settlements that they've had to come up with. But because of police action.
You know, and that's another reason why, you know, you get the state fighting so hard in many cases to try to prevent that, because they know it costs the state a lot of money, right? And they don't want to have to pay out.
That's right.
Even more important, why we should get it right the first time. Why we need to get it right the first time. Why our accuracy and our outcomes need to be, you know, at a high level continuously.
Well, you know, and this is another, you know, we talked a little bit about the criminal justice system, and another real problem I have with what's happened in the last, God, 50 years, at least 40, but probably going back 50 years, is plea deals. Prosecutor comes along, they charge somebody to the hilt, knowing that they can't probably convict this person on all of it. So they stack the charges, and then they come
Absolutely.
along, this poor slob doesn't have any money, you can't afford a decent lawyer, and say, well, you know, if you'll just take this plea and admit blah blah blah, well, you know, we'll do a plea with you, cut your sentence, you know, way down, or you know, very little jail time, maybe even no jail time, but you got to admit, you know, you got to take this plea deal. And people are against the wall and are like, okay, whatever, let me out. I don't agree with it. If the state brings charges, if they whatever they charge you with must stand. Allowing a prosecutor to back away and say, well, you know, it really wasn't first degree murder. They didn't really attack this person. They, you know, maybe they just said there was a fight. It was, you know, um, so they changed the charges, reduced everything, just so they could get a conviction. I don't agree with that. I don't, and I have a real problem with it.
You know, I mean, it's similar to using the, you know, the death penalty as leverage that I was talking about. I think before you came on today, Jack,
Yep.
about
Yep.
using that as leverage. And you know, the same thing is true what you mentioned about, you know, having the deck stacked against you. And you know, I don't, you know, I'm not an expert. I'm not a lawyer. Haven't studied law extensively, but one thing is true is that they can charge you with, is, you know, they can throw the book at you, as they say. They can charge you with, you know, let's just say 15 crimes. You have to clear the table on that to be free. They only
Yep.
have to get one.
That's right. That's exactly right.
And and that is, you know, maybe there needs to be some sort of limitation on how many charges you can bring, or I don't know, what's fair is fair. I don't know the answer to these are big questions that hopefully, you know, they're being discussed by, you know, professionals. But it does seem that, you know, they have the burden of proof, yes, but they also have tools like that where, you know, they can say, hey, we have 15 charges against you, we only need to get one. Now, are you going to
That's
take
why I say
the
I
plea
think,
deal?
yeah, right. That's what I'm saying. I just I don't think it's right that the system is allowed to stack this the way that they do to get, and it's another form of leverage,
Right.
just like you said. I don't think it's right at all.
We'll continue on. I wanted to just discuss a little bit more about Ford, back to our case, because this is pertinent to what we're talking about. Ford was accused of taking bribes from criminal defendants. We talked about this a little bit in the premiere. He told prosecutors that defendants were helping homicide investigation, securing their release on bogus cooperation agreements. He was convicted in federal court in 2010 for conspiring to commit extortion under color of official right, extortion, and providing false statements to the FBI. He was sentenced to 12 and a half years in prison in February 11th and has since been released. So he got out early. Or I guess that right on time. I'm not sure, because 2011 and 12, it would be right around now. That would have been like last year. Yeah. Um, so with, I guess with, you know, good behavior, as they call it, maybe he got out earlier. But um, 12 and a half years for 20 years, 20 years of bad police work. Does that hold true to you guys? Does that seem fair? That he put people away for years and years. He extorted people for money. For 20 years, he got away with this, and he gets 12 years. I'm guaranteeing you, some of these people got more than 12 years.
Oh,
That he
and
locked up.
these are the things that they could prove. I'm like I said before, I'll bet you that there were many other things he did they couldn't prove. They knew, but they couldn't prove it.
Ford also extracted false confessions in several high-profile criminal cases, including 3 juveniles. In 1990, the murder of a Norfolk restaurant owner and from foreign Navy sailors known as the Norfolk Four. But I didn't know about this other one. 3 juveniles in 1990 for the murder of a Norfolk restaurant owner. I'm going to have to look into that one.
Doesn't surprise me. It doesn't
So
surprise
those,
me at all.
I'm willing to bet that those 3 juveniles that were robbed of their youth probably served more combined years than 12.5. And so this isn't enough for me. I'm sorry. Maybe I'm being heavy-handed. Maybe it's easy to stand there and say, hey, he deserves more. This guy deserves more. But I'm looking at the analogy of what other people received because of what he did.
It took their life.
He took their life. And is that enough? I don't know. What do you think?
I don't think so. I don't think so.
What's an appropriate number? I mean, if you were Judge Jack, what would you sentence him to for doing that?
Well, depending on what he did, at minimum, as many years as those kids lost their lives, their liberty. At minimum. I mean, that's a good question.
An eye for an eye type, eye for an eye type of
right.
Type of justice. I think
right,
that's at least has that logic to it, right?
He did it intentionally. He did it on purpose. He did it with purpose to get a conviction.
Right. Well, welcome to the show, James Crane. Thanks for joining us. Not sure if you caught this part. James says you would have to reopen every case he was involved in, and that's the article that we're kind of looking at right now, just to give you guys a little bit of an update in case you just joined us. So cases connected to him are now being reviewed by prosecutors in a partnership with the University of Virginia Law School. They are reviewing cases connected to him. And so I think they are going through his entire career, actually. I think that's what this article is stating. If not, they're going through the high-profile ones. I wouldn't see why they wouldn't go through all of them.
I think they have to. Just my opinion. Judge Jack, Cherie. That's what the JJ and Jack. Judge Jack. Well,
that's what JJ stands for. I never knew that. Judge Jack. Oh, now I understand what J-Jax is for. Judge Jack 61. All right. That's a new monocle that you have now, or a new nickname. Wilson, who we talked about, Eric Wilson, he's one of the Norfolk Four. Here's a quote from him. Can't fix it alone, Wilson said. We need cops to come forward, say when they see something wrong. We need people to come forward and not be scared to talk to somebody. And I think he brings up a really good point. Sometimes it's not easy. You don't want to put your neck. You're like, well, I saw this guy do something wrong. Are you going to go against the thin blue line? Are you going to put your neck out there for someone that may or may not be guilty? And I think, to me, we have to just design the system with stronger, policies that say, you always have to have someone with you. One of the things we've talked about in the past is not having law enforcement collect any evidence. That should be a third-party system. Things like that add robust techniques to the evidence collection process. That's the kind of thing that is going to safeguard us.
Short of that evidence going to be destroyed, I would agree. I mean, if there's a fire or something that's water or something that's going to destroy that piece of evidence, I agree.
So to finish out, a quote from attorney Ramin Fatehi says, "Our justice system is only as strong as people's faith in its ability to deliver honest justice and show that the right people are in prison for the right reasons." Such a great point, such a thing that we've been kind of saying over and over here. If this continues to happen, and I'm sure there are people in chat that would agree with me, that this deteriorates everyone's faith in the system. I started talking tonight about how I still have faith in the justice system overall. I still think that, we're looking at percentages here. Nothing's going to be perfect. I'm a realist about that. But the more cases that you have like this, the more times law enforcement is caught with their hands in the cookie jar, or caught planting evidence, or caught, et cetera, it erodes the public trust. And, we're kind of at one of the all-time lows, public trust, when it comes to law enforcement, justice system. And, one way to restore that, or to keep the integrity, is to make sure that we get it right. And how do we get it right? We have to strengthen protections. We have to make it harder to cheat. We have to make it harder to cheat. We have to make it hard. We have to make the punishments more stringent. More than 12.5 years of having a complete corrupt cop wrongfully convict multiple people for 20 years straight, and then he gets essentially 10 years, a decade of his life. Well, if we both start working as cops, and we're in our early 20s there, Jack, and we're looking at cops and go, well, hey, Jack, you really shouldn't, you got to play by the rules, or you could get in a lot of trouble. And Jack says to me, oh, youngin, sure, you're a rookie. Most you're ever going to get is 10 years. You could do this a whole career and you could get 10 years. You're fine. Right. Don't even worry about it.
Right. Make a pile of money on the side.
How's my behavior going to change knowing that?
Right. It won't. It absolutely will not.
But if Jack says to me, oh, you're a rookie, you need to learn the ways, they don't F around here. If you plant someone, you're going to jail, and you're going to jail for a considerable amount of time. You're going to lose your pension. You're never going to be able to be a cop anymore, and your life is going to be ruined. You're going to have the scarlet letter hanging over you, just like these guys from the Norfolk 4 who can't find a job, have trouble in their lives, have no friends, because they're still considered sex offenders, even though they weren't, even though that they were wrongfully convicted for a period of time at least. They had that scarlet letter. Well, where's the scarlet letter for Ford?
Exactly. And did he get to keep his pension? I'd be interested in that too.
I'd be interested to know if he kept his pension. Yeah. Well, we have, they have a strong, police union. In the 13 years since Robert Glenn Ford's federal conviction, there's never been a comprehensive review of then Detective Ford's cases to determine whether his misdeeds extended beyond those that federal investigators and prosecutors, as well as a diligent innocence lawyers, have already uncovered. So apparently that's the plan. So as of last fall, they are going to review homeboy Ford's wrongful convictions. So I guess it's something. It's not a perfect world by any means, but it's good to see that his cases are going to be looked at. And how much is that going to cost? Like we said before, it's going to cost the taxpayer money. Whether whatever outcome it is, what happens if they find more wrongdoing? I hope he gets prosecuted again then.
Well, depending on the statute of limitations, that's possible.
Got a question for you, Jack. Is Judge Jack the new Judge Judy?
No, no,
We got a
no,
new
no, no,
show. We got a new show coming up for you, Judge
no,
Jack. He's gonna tell you guys. Gonna judge it for you.
no, no, no. You know,
Mr. Jinx in the chat. Nice to see you.
no, not you know, it would be. I mean, during my early life, and I mean, I was aware of the legal system, but it wasn't something that's really pulled me in. I was interested in it, but it wasn't like an interest in wanting to do that job. It was more of an interest of watching it work. I guess is the best way to put it.
I had a student tell me one time that I'd be a good judge. That was fair. I was like, thank you. I think that's a really good compliment. I don't think I could. I don't know if I would have the wherewithal to do it. Those are some long hours, and those are some. It's a lot of reading. I'll tell you that. It's a lot of
Yes,
reading.
yes,
I don't mind
and
reading,
understand.
but
Well, and understanding, doing research for, court cases for citation, understanding how to do that, having a good staff around you that you can trust to help you, go through these things. It's a whole process. I, I think it would be an interesting career. I mean, I watched a lot of different cases and so forth on YouTube and seeing these various judges, and by and large, most of them are they seem to be pretty fair. They've done their job. And they're on point in their decisions. Now, of course, there's exceptions to that rule, of course, but it'd be an interesting job. I have to say,
I
later
think
in
I could
life,
be
I can say
really fair.
that.
I
Yeah,
think I
later
could
in
be
life,
really
I can
fair. Yeah.
say that. Yeah.
Judge Jack. I like that. That's what the JJ stands for, you guys. Now we know for sure. It took quite a few years for us to break the code. Who did that? We got to give credit to the right person. Who was that? I don't recall.
It was Cherie, yeah. Yeah, that's pretty funny. No, my career is totally different. I was in industrial printing for 25, 27 years, whatever it was.
Excellent.
Yeah. And that's another, I'm not going to get into it, but it's another very interesting industry in itself that encompasses so many other disciplines of other industries that support printing, and I'm talking about everything. Man, I was never into newspaper. It's still kind of the same process. Machinery is a little bit different, but you know, like potato chip bags, snack food, pet food,
Hmm.
frozen food, medical industry. There's so many industries that use flexible packaging. Then, of course, you have rigid packaging like cereal boxes. I was never into that, but again, it's sort of the same process, a little bit different machinery, of course, different substrate. But you know, I loved my career. I learned so much, man. So many awesome people. Um, but again, looking back, I was interested in the legal side of it, the policing side of it, but I never was really drawn to do it. It just wasn't me.
Hmm. Yeah, I think had I made some different choices. To be honest, growing up from where I did, no secret here, growing up in a small town in Wisconsin, um, being a lawyer was not a real thing. It was not a real choice. It was never a lawyer or a doctor. I guess, like, just from where I grew up, that was like, oh, who do you think you are? Who do you think
Right.
you think you're that smart? And now, after completing a master's degree and working on my PhD now, yeah, I am that smart. I could have done it.
Sure.
Now, you want to talk about long hours? You want to talk about a lot of reading? I don't know if that's for me either, though. You know what I mean? So, not that I
Right.
don't read a lot. I read a lot, but um, the briefings, reading 200 pages about a case, and you only have, you have to be ready tomorrow. You got to read 200, and you have to process that information. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe But I think the passion would have been there. It's something I looked into law school at some point not that long ago. But before I started my PhD, I was like, what are my other options? And I'm happy with where I am. But yeah, had the world spun a little differently, had that butterfly flapped its wings a little differently, I could see myself in that role.
Sure. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Stewart says, in the past, I dated a criminal defense barrister. She's an amazing, kind, and lovely person it was hard to come to terms with how she could defend such obviously guilty clients involved such horrendous acts. Everyone is entitled to a fair trial, but I admire how she could switch off her moral code. Yeah, that's another one. Being a defense attorney is another completely different beast. I think prosecutors and defense attorneys are like cats and dogs, that different sometimes. I see it hard for people to go from one to the other, but Stuart brings up a really good point, and it's something that I've spoke about in the past, and that is, everyone is entitled to a fair trial, and that is another thing that breathes integrity into the system, is that we need strong defense, because that way the prosecutors stay honest, right? That if we stopped having strong defenses, everyone would be guilty all the time, and wrongful convictions would most certainly increase.
Well, yeah. I mean, you think about I'll just kind of akin this to Perry Mason. Remember Perry Mason?
Absolutely.
He talks about. I'm getting a real echo here, man. See if that's any better. There. Nope, I'm still getting an echo.
It sounded good from over here, but let me know in the chat, guys, if we're getting an echo.
Yeah, I can definitely hear it. But anyway, Perry Mason explained it as the state's brought charges. I'm here to make them prove it, or something to that effect. Right?
Yeah.
I'm here to make them prove it.
Right. You brought the charge. It is on. The onus is on the state. The responsibility is on the state to prove their case. And
that's right.
I think sometimes we move away from beyond a reasonable doubt.
It's been eroded. It's been eroded over the years.
I don't recall brings up a really good point. I don't recall says you don't switch off your moral code. In my opinion, defense attorneys make sure the defendant's rights are protected, and I think that's a good point. And you go after the weak points in a prosecution's case. It seems like the burden of proof is on the prosecution, yet the deck is stacked against the defendant.
That's right.
And there's a little bit of a disconnect there. And so, I spoke in the past about how, money gets you off. Had O.J. Simpson not been O.J. Simpson, that case is not going to turn out the same way. I'm sorry. That's my opinion.
Yeah.
If he was working with a public defender, how long is that case going to take? A couple of weeks and it's done?
That's right, because it became a show. It became almost a game in many sense. And Marcia Clark.
Yeah, he had 5 lawyers, probably $5 million apiece. You know what I mean? Like,
it was a lot. I don't know what the legal fees ended up being, but I'm sure it was well into multi-millions. Sure.
Yeah, maybe I shouldn't just use the OJ case as an example, but any case, really, anybody with wealth. Compared to a public defender. And so, the deck is stacked against, and we've heard others say this. I'll quote Stephen Avery: poor people lose all the time.
That's right. They do.
So then the deck is stacked against you even more.
That's right. If you don't have resources, you are screwed. Or you can be. I'm not saying in every case, because it obviously not. But, because there are a lot of good public defenders that they strive to do everything they can to make sure that a defendant is protected. Sheree makes another good point here. If a prosecutor can plow under one defendant's rights, he can plow through everyone's rights. And this is the honor in being a good defense attorney. I'm not talking about a sleazeball. I'm not somebody's trying to, we remember back in the so many years ago that there were some really, well, actually not that many years ago. You think about Len Kaczynski. I mean, this guy was a complete sleazeball, man.
Yeah, that's right.
So, and this happened, I mean, I know we're looking back at 20 years, 18 years, 17, 18 years, but still, that mindset of Len Kaczynski and what he did intentionally.
Well, we can make the parallel here in the confessions where, in the Brendan Dassey case, his first lawyer, Len Kaczynski, is not present in the interrogation. And in this case, in the confessions, the lawyer's not present in the interrogation.
That's right. I don't need to be there. What?
Stewart says, I don't recall. I see your point of view, but it was hard to watch her put a vulnerable victim on the stand and attempt to destroy them with any means to help her client. Yeah, I mean, Stewart, you bring up a really difficult point about, the morality of defense attorneys and how far they're willing to take it. And yeah, that's another beast in itself.
That's part of the adversarial system, and which, I think we should have a truth system instead of this adversarial system. But I don't know. I don't know the reasons why the system was set up in this adversarial manner. Maybe to make it where a prosecutor and a defense attorney would get kind of pissed off, would go that extra mile within the law, of course. But that's their job. They have to, if there are any cracks that a defense attorney can poke into a case, that's their job to do so, to defend their client. And I'm not saying it's certainly unpleasant to think about a defense attorney really going after somebody if a prosecutor puts, a victim on the stand for whatever reason, whatever they've been through, and to see a defense attorney really go after them. Yeah, that's difficult, but their job is to, I think it's not personal. They're doing a job. I think that's the point that Sheree's trying to make. They're not necessarily turning it off. It's just they understand that's their job to do, to poke a hole if they can, to make a timeline switch. Or are you sure?
Right.
That's right. That's right.
So from Judge Jack to an earlier comment made by Stewart, there's always the human element in every case. Maybe AI judges in the future. I wanted to kind of touch on that. Yeah, it's almost laughable at first, and then you go, wait, maybe I should think about this seriously. And as you guys know, I'm interested in AI. Still going to put out some more AI videos. I got some reaction videos to do. But to address this one, I don't know if AI judge is the right call on that, but I could see artificial intelligence being used in evidence processing, especially in photographs and videos, things that you miss, things that the human eye doesn't catch the first time, reviewing documents and statements that are being made. If you have artificial intelligence read all of the interviews done by all of the suspects, you can ask it questions, probing questions about the interviews. What did such and such say? That speeds the process up. That
immensely.
Yeah. What if and ask them to process the images? Ask AI, were there any images with a picture of a blue shirt? Yeah, here are the images. It'll show you right away. So I do think artificial intelligence has a role to play, but not in that terms of Skynet or Big Brother where it's making decisions. Right. But, and this is something that you hear me say about artificial intelligence continually. It's a tool. It's not an end-all be-all. We can't subcontract out reality to artificial intelligence, but we can definitely use it to help us make things easier for us, just like when we invented the wheel and the shovel, right?
Yep. You think about, I don't know if anybody's watched, just switching gears on you just for a second. I don't know if anybody's watched the documentary on Netflix called Ashley Madison. Has anyone watched that yet?
No, but I was gonna watch it. I kind of want to watch some more Netflix documentaries and cover them because it's easy for everybody to watch. But
Right.
tell us about
Uh,
Ashley Madison.
well, it's not to get too far. I watched it. I binged it last night. It's only 3 episodes, so but
Okay.
oh my god, oh my god, dude. Of course, Ashley Madison was an adult. Not it's adult themed. It's not like you don't go there to see a bunch of photos. It's not like that at all. It was set up for married people or people involved that have a partner to have a clandestine meeting with someone else to do something on the side privately. It's not anything. There's no strings attached. Not going to have a relationship. These people are not going to leave their partners. It's basically pretty much for a hookup. Anyway, you find out late. You don't find this out until I think episode 3, but I can spill it because they charged men. Men had to pay uh, to use this service. Women did not. Women did not have to pay. All they had to do was put up a profile, their interest, yada yada yada, and they were through their computer software, whatever, they were able to do this matchup. But it comes out later, and as you find out, a lot of these women's profiles were fake, and because like when you go to um, let's say you go to Best Buy or you go to many companies do it. You get a little pop up. May I help you? Is there something you're looking for? Blah blah blah. It's a little bot. Well, Ashley Madison had this apparently on their website. A male would log in. He's browsing, looking for whatever, a partner, somebody to hook up with. A little bot would pop up with some female's name. Well, come to find out, these weren't real people. They were bots. They were using. Of course, it was a less AI.
Wow.
Yeah, it was a less AI than it is now. Of course, this is several years ago, but it was still around. And it would draw these guys in to have a conversation with a bot, and they had no idea that was going on.
Talk
Dude,
about being manipulated. Wow.
dude, it's so bad. I really recommend this. You think about how dastardly some people can be. Holy shysta. Mm-mm-mm. It's a really good watch, though. Really well done.
So, I put in the comments there that I had heard about Ashley Madison data breach before. So in 2015,
Yeah.
a group called the Impact Team announced they'd stolen the user data of Ashley Madison. They copied the personal informations of the site users, and as
35
evidence
million.
of 2,500
35 million.
users were initially released, and then what did you say? 3,500 more, or what?
35 million. Million. They were worldwide. It's probably one of the largest, if not the largest, data breaches ever. And these people that call themselves the Impact Group, had never done
They had
anything
an
before
impact. Yeah.
and never did anything after.
Oh, it
I'm not
seems
gonna.
like
I'm not. Well, I'm not gonna get into and give out a
is this brought
spoiler.
up in the documentary?
Oh, big time.
Okay. Okay. All right. Well, maybe we don't always have to cover murder. It's just called Doc Club. It's not called Crime Doc Club. I
Right.
mean, I guess that is a crime, so we don't have to just cover murder. I mean, I'm happy to take a look at Ashley Madison.
Oh, it's great. You're really gonna like it. I promise. But I don't want to give out a bunch of spoilers about the show for those that haven't watched it yet, because I think this is actually just dropped here recently. I just happened to turn on Netflix last night, and there it was, and I thought, okay, I'll watch this trailer.
I also
I'm like,
saw that, and I was, looking for the next one, but I think we got a few in the queue already that we're
oh
working
yeah,
on.
oh
So,
yeah,
but yeah,
Outcries, outstanding.
yeah. Why don't we talk about that for a little bit? Kind of getting to the end of the live here today. Um, we could talk about Outcry, which we're going to cover next week. So you guys, if you haven't seen Outcry yet, let's see, it's available on different streaming platforms. I think you can watch it on Hulu.
Yes, and Showtime.
Yeah, it's available on Hulu, Paramount Plus, and Showtime, whichever Showtime has. And
Showtime. Well, Showtime's tied with Paramount Plus because they bought them.
Oh, okay.
Paramount owns Showtime.
Okay, I gotcha. So check that out. So why don't we talk a little bit about Outcry and give people, an idea about what we're going to be talking about next week. So next week's going to be, it's going to be a little bit, the subject matter is a little more difficult to talk about.
It's tough. It's hard.
And so, I don't even know where to start with it. So we're going to talk about a case about a football player from Texas.
Star football player.
And how he's accused of an SA of a 4-year-old.
And a 6-year-old.
And so, although the content, the content of the case, context of the case is really difficult to talk about, we do see more of the same things happening in these confessions. And we talked about the death penalty that's used as leverage. That happens in the case Outcry. They use the death penalty. I'm sorry, they don't use the death penalty. They use leverage of a long sentence, plea agreement to get what they want. And there are aggressive tactics. There's a lot of funny business in that one. It's a prime example of what not to do in a case. And so it gets pretty. There's a lot of twists and turns. They have the best friend is involved. The main character, Greg, had his whole life in front of him, and it was ruined, just absolutely destroyed.
Wrecked his life. And not only, this Greg Kelly's best friend, but this real shit detective, I'll call him. The prosecutor, that's a facepalm. But not only that, then began to find out about the defense attorney, his own defense attorney. I got to mute. I got a phone call.
No worries. Take your phone call, and I can see that you're an important gentleman there, Judge Jack. We'll address some comments while we wait for Jack to come back. Sheree says, Travis is actually in the courtroom in one of the scenes in Outcry. Well, that is good to know. Then Travis should join the live next week. I think if he's around, if he gets a chance to hear this is your beck and call for Travis to join us in the live next week. And if he can discuss, his perceptions of that. So, Outcry, which one of the things that is new to me that I learned for next week that we're going to talk about Outcry in terms of law enforcement, an outcry is when a young child claims of an SA against them. And so that is why it's called Outcry. There's actually 2 young boys who come forward with a story. And so we're just going to cover the first 3 episodes next week. So if you want to get caught up with us, watch episode 1 through 3 of Outcry. And then the following week, we're going to wrap it up. It was a 5-part series, and we got to talking, and so in order to kind of get it done in a timely manner, it felt like we had to do 2 episodes. So watch episode 1 through 3 of Outcry for next week. That's your homework out there. I know Professor Jeff is giving you guys all homework to do, but that's the way. That's the way the show works. I'm not big on homework, but in order for this to work, you got to do your homework, right?
Yeah, just for keep in mind, our summary of the 3 episodes is we really kind of picked up a good portion portion of the highlights because literally, when you watch it, you'll find out there's so much detail in each episode. There's just if we did a comprehensive kind of thing, it would probably take us. Well, it would take us probably 5 episodes or 6 to cover everything. There's so
Absolutely.
much. There's
Yeah,
so much stuff that happens.
we
Yeah.
didn't even talk about the girlfriend. We didn't talk about the family. We didn't talk about the protest movement that started because of him. And there's a few
Didn't really
characters that, but
didn't really
right,
get deep. Didn't really get deep into the defense lawyer, which it really does get deep
so
into his own
that's why
defense
we
lawyer.
got the lives, right?
Yeah, that's
So
right.
if you guys do your part and watch Outcry before next week, and then in the live, we can talk about all those things that we don't hit in the review.
So,
But
yeah.
yeah, I mean, we talked for about an hour, and we just brushed the surface of it. It felt like so. There's a lot to discuss. If you guys want to join in, I hope. I know Susan couldn't make it this week, and she had come for the last 2 episodes. So um, we're looking for more people to join the conversation and share. That makes this a lot more fun and frankly easy for us because we'd love to have more opinions to discuss about this.
Right.
But
It's not just our opinion. We want other people's opinions too, because you know so many of us live here in the United States. I mean, I know there's law enforcement around the world, and you have your own problems with your criminal justice system. But it's like Jeff said, we got big pants. We're fine with if you differ with our opinion. That's what it's all about.
yeah, even believe it or not, Judge Jack does make mistakes.
I do.
Was there anything you wanted to add to the confessions to just wrap up about it? What if you were going to one overarching point that you would make about this documentary, and then as they say, this is your last wraps at this one.
Yeah, it really goes back to what we talked about earlier on about policing and consequences to actions, real consequences that I feel must take place in order for the criminal justice system to help it right itself, to properly uh, make sure that we're always after the truth and not just a confession, which is so prevalent in this case. This is a poster child for so much of what we talk about in police action, prosecutor action, state action, I guess you could say. Um, Seeing these reforms happen in real time, I'd certainly like to see them in my lifetime, which I'm not a spring chicken anymore, believe it or not, but
Really?
really, I'm not. It's hard to believe I'll be 63 here in a few months. But,
You sound like you're 25. I don't know.
well, I'm just got one of those voices that hasn't cracked yet.
Do you feel 63? That's the
Some
question.
some damn days I do.
Yeah.
Most of the time, mentally I don't. I just don't think of it in those terms. I just try to do what I do, and stay focused on. When I get off onto a track of getting focused on something and not thinking about necessarily the age, it's mental, man. It's mental. It really is.
It is. It sounds mental to me.
It
I'm
is.
just kidding. I don't always feel my age. I think I heard someone say once like your body gets older, but your brain kind of stays the same. And let's hope that for everybody. Let's hope that because the opposite is not something that we want. That your brain gets old and your body is young. That's definitely not the one that we want. But I don't recall says we are spring chickens. Judge Jack.
I saw that. Okay, I'll go with that. I mean, some days I don't feel like a 20-year-old anymore, but I don't really necessarily feel pushing 63. Some days, it's like it's a little different. The bones creak and pop and so forth and so on.
let's hope for less creaking and popping, and that's what we can do. Try to take care of ourselves the best we can.
That's right.
So we can be as long as we can. Well, I really appreciate everybody out there that has joined us, for this. It's been fun last few weeks doing these. Do have an interview coming up. Gonna be booking another interview soon. So we have a special interview coming up in the meantime in the next couple of weeks. Um, as we said, we're going to be doing Outcry on the next 2 weeks. We'll be talking about the documentary Outcry. After that, keep your ideas coming. Maybe we'll take a look at that Ashley Madison one, or maybe we'll take a look at Murder on a Sunday Morning. I guess I kind of want to take something that is, easy for people to watch. So we'll try to pick one that is available on Netflix or one of the main streaming services that isn't too hard to dig up. That way you guys can easily find it. So, but we don't have to just talk about murder cases, or we don't have to just talk about the heavy ones. It's called Documentary Club, so I guess any documentary is potentially on the table. With that said, Jack mentioned it earlier, but we really want to hear your opinions. We really want to hear other points of view. That's what's going to make this special and fun for us. Jack and I can talk to each other all the time, and we can figure out, what we think about a documentary. But really, you guys participating, and thank you to everybody who has participated today and in the past, and we hope you come back for many, many more. With that said, I think that's about it for today. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Leave a comment down in the comments about what you want to see in a future documentary, what we got wrong, what we got right, what maybe we missed a major point. We'd love to hear it. Just be part of the conversation, and that's really all we're trying to do is have a little club. So join the club. It's nice to see all you clubbers out there. We're going to the club. We're having a good time at the club. Thank you, James. Dark Side, I don't recall. Try to get as many as we can in here. And that's it for today. So I'm Jeff.
And I'm Jack.
We'll see you guys on the next one.